everyone. Welcome to the IB Psychology webinar. I would like to start by introducing Ms. Bhavya. Ms. Bhavya is a psychotherapist and an educator with an extensive immersion in psychology, both as a student and as a practitioner. She holds a master's degree in clinical psychology and has taught IBDP psychology for over 3 years. And she has mentored students in their extended essays and in their internal assessment, with many of her students achieving A grades and sevens. Having conducted over 2,000 therapy sessions, they transitioned into a full time private practice but continue to mentor IBDP students due to their deep passion for teaching. Her workshop bridges both education and mental health, bringing valuable insights to the IBDP and psychology exams in today's discussion. Uh, Thank you for having this session, Bhavya. We can have you start the session, I think, because people are waiting. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Val. Anybody would like to turn on the cameras? I think it would be nice whenever you're comfortable if you can turn them on. It feels more personal. Otherwise, it feels like I'm talking to the screen. So it would be really nice if all of you can turn on the cameras and also engage with today's webinar. Also, at the same time, if you have any questions, you can at this, on the spot, put them on chat, and towards the end, we can take them up. I'll just share my screen and again. Quick question from all of you. If you could please tell me if you are an HL or an SL student, I think it's going to help me prioritize also the content, and accordingly we can take it forward. If you can quickly maybe reshare, like rename yourselves or put it on chat, that would be nice. Psychology HL, okay. That's all right, Shan. No, not a problem if you're unable to turn on the camera. HLIB. Okay. Others, if you can also please put it on chat. HL. Okay. HL. And you are with another student. Okay. All right. It was an SL. All right. So I was asking this because I thought maybe I can take up paper 3 at the end, but I think most of you are HL students, so I'll take up paper 3 as well. We'll follow the format. Okay, so this is the nature of the subject. I asked you particularly because for HL and SL, because some of you, of course, for HL students have an extra paper, which is paper 3, and an extra option also in paper 2, which is abnormal psychology or developmental health psychology and stress. Sorry, human relationships. So these are the 4 options. Of course, HL students have to do 2. SL students have to go with 1. This is the nature of the subject, which I think the large message over here is that you all know all of your content that you're studying is very research heavy. It would be also helpful if all of you can also tell me if you're in DP1 or DP2, which is like 11th or 12th grade, and put it on chat. I will not go into the basics as much, and we'll just keep it focused on the exam tips if all of you are from the 12th. Okay, 1 and 1. All right, so you guys are in 11th, grade 11. Shan is also in 11th. So you guys are not appearing for your boards right now. All right. DP2. All right. So Adriha, right? I hope I'm not pronouncing your name incorrect. We'll just take a few minutes to go through the basics as well so that we can keep the focus and spend more time on exam tips only. All right. So when you see this, diagram over here, usually in schools, teachers start with like the psychology teaching begins with paper 3, which is research methods. Even if you are an SL student, teachers prefer to pick up research methods first, so that your research methods and ethics, which is paper 3 largely, so that your foundation can be laid well. And then we go to bio, sociocultural, cognitive in any order that the teachers prefer. And then all of this understanding of research methods and all the 3 these units helps us understand and put into application for paper 2. content, and knowledge. So that's how I'm going to keep it. That's the format of the webinar also today. We're going to focus on paper 3 first, and then we're going to narrow it down to paper 1 and then paper 2. So these are the important details. Now, this is paper 3. This is purely from an exam perspective. Of course, students who are from 11th grade, keep these things in mind so that when you appear for your exams, you are keeping this in mind and you start this practice from the beginning. So it's very helpful for the 11th graders who are here today. Paper 3. Now, these are the important details. Yes, HL only. The paper is of 24 marks. The weightage is 20%, and the paper duration is 1 hour. For SL students who don't have paper 3, these details may not be important for you, but the content wise things are important. So keep a check. Maybe, I don't know, this is very exam focused, so it may not be very significant or relevant to you, but at least you can keep track and just pay attention for a little bit. Question 1. Now, this is the question paper format. Let me open the question paper and show it to you. This is Psychology HL paper 3. In this, primarily, you will see that the entire paper has 3 questions. Question 1, 2, 3, of course. Question 1 has 2 parts to it. Question 2 has 2 types. And question 3 has 3 types. When I say question 1 having 3 parts, you have to attempt all 3. Question 2 is worth 6 marks. You get 2 options and you have to choose one. Question 3 is worth 9 marks. Again, you have 3 types there. You have to attempt, one out of the 3. Now, in the paper, you may not get options. You will not. It's not like in question 2, you will get 2 options and you have to select one. No. Even in question 3, it's not like you will get 3 questions and you will have to select one on the spot. No, you don't get an option to choose when you are sitting for the exam. The paper in advance is out. You all have access to the question paper. You know what the question is going to be till date, like from now and the beginning of the 2 years of your psychology DP study. You have the question paper with you. I hope all of you know that. Give me a thumbs up if you all know that the question paper is out already. Other than the stimulus piece, only that keeps changing. So I'm assuming, Shan, you didn't know? The exam paper is with you. Paper 3 paper is with you. Like it's given in the guide already. Okay. Only the stimulus piece keeps changing. The questions, that they're going to be the same questions only. For example, not example, I mean, this is the paper right in front of you. The first question has 3 parts. Like I said, it'll consist of all of the following questions for a total of 9 marks. Each part is 3 plus 3 plus 3. And the questions will be assessed using a rubric, which is also, of course, out there with you. This is the first question. These are the 3 parts. You have to attempt all 3. First question is on identifying the research method and outlining 2 characteristics of this method. Question, like part 2 of question 1, is describing the sampling method and which is used in the stimulus piece. Number 3 is that you have to suggest an alternative research method and you also have to give your rationale for it. So there's going to be a stimulus piece, and based on the stimulus piece, of course, you will get these questions only. All right. For question 2, there are 2 types. We know the question 2 for sure is on ethics. Like, so these are the 2 types. 1, describe ethical considerations that were applied in the study and explain if further ethical considerations could be applied. Or you can get this one, which is describe ethical considerations in reporting the results and explain additional ethical considerations that could be taken into account when applying findings of the study. So these are the 2 types. Out of these 2, one will come. All right, but the main thing is that it's focused on ethical considerations only. Question 3, these are the 3 possibilities. Out of these 3, one will come in your paper. Generalizing, it could be on credibility or it could be on how to avoid bias. All right, so these are the 3 questions that are there. Out of these 3 in the paper, one will come. All right, it's not like 3 will be there and you have an option to choose. No, you don't have an option to choose in the paper. These 3 are there. You know that already in advance. All you need to prepare is all these questions and any of this can come. However, question number 1 all three parts are going to be there, and those three parts you have to attempt, and they're also already given. So the best thing that you can do for paper 3, which goes without saying, is you have the question paper, keep taking different stimulus pieces and continue to practice. All right. Now, since the question paper is already something that you have access to, does not mean that it's very easy to score. But if you understand the rubric well, if you understand and learn the mark scheme by heart, it's very easy to score. All right. It's very, very important to score well in paper 3. You need to understand, of course, the basics need to be there. You need to have good knowledge of research methods. But in terms of, the focus of this webinar today is not for me to teach you this, but the focus is to help you with the exams. From an exam point of view, number one tip, memorize the mark scheme, which is not the mark scheme, memorize the rubric. It has to be learnt by heart. And what do I mean by the rubric? Rubric is here. For example, identify the research method used and outline 2 characteristics of the method. 1 mark for correctly identifying the research method and up to 2 marks for outlining 2 characteristics of the method. All right. So out of the 3 maximum that this part of the question carries, 1 mark you will get if you correctly identify the research method, and you will get up to 2 marks for outlining 2 characteristics of the method. So you know very well what the question is asking you to do only if you memorize the rubric. Now you may think that it's already given in the question. What's there to memorize? It's saying identify the research method and it's asking you to outline 2 characteristics, right? However, if you come to this part, describe the sampling method used in the study. If you don't remember the rubric, what will you assume this question is asking? On the spot, you may think that the question is asking that I just have to describe the sampling method which is used in the study. No. Students, what they can do is some can opt to, write details of the sampling method. For example, if the sampling method is random sampling, the student may write so much extra. Some student may just write like a one-line definition. However, the rubric here tells you that 1 mark is for correctly naming the sampling method and 2 marks are for accurately describing at least 2 characteristics of the method. So it's very, very important that you know not just the questions, but also the rubric that is already here along with it. Question number 2, the total marks is 6. Another tip, I'll go through it from the presentation also, just telling you so that you can make a note of it as well. In ethics question, ensure that you opt for a 3+3 logic. All right. Now, what does that mean? If you see the question, both the questions, so I'll take up one, it's the same pattern in both. It says, describe the ethical considerations that were applied in the study and explain if further ethical considerations could be applied. Consider this a two-part question in your mind. One is describe ethical considerations that were applied. Number 2, the second part of the question is explain if further ethical considerations could be applied. So you have to write 3 ethical considerations that you think from the stimulus piece that were applied in that were taken care of, and 3 that could have been applied. So automatically, so let's say, for example, you see only 2 that were applied, and you say that, okay, in the stimulus piece I could only point out 2 ethical considerations that were applied, you will lose out on a mark. I know that you can only see very clearly 2 that were applied in the stimulus piece, but apply your logic of connecting. For example, if let's say consent is there, right? What is another ethical consideration that I think goes very, very well? If it's not specifically mentioned, I can assume that this ethical consideration would also have been applied, and accordingly write the other 3. You have to divide your answer in this 3+3 logic. So 3 marks are for ethical considerations that were applied and 3 for the ethical considerations that could have been applied. All right. Keep giving some thumbs up or some reaction or anything in the chat if you want to write, so that I know you guys are present and I'm not going too fast. If I am, let me know. Okay. Then comes question number 3. Now, question number 3, again, very, very important to memorize the rubric for question 3, because if you see the pattern, I know in paper one, there's only one rubric for short answer questions, one rubric for ERQs. That applies to, you know, paper two also. In paper three, each question has its own rubric. So that makes it a little confusing and tough as well. So question three will consist of one of the following questions for a total of 9 marks. These are the three questions that can come. However, the rubric for question three, all three kinds of possibilities, there's only one rubric, which is this right in front of you. The answer does not reach a standard described by the descriptors below. You will get a 0. 1 to 3, I'll only focus on 7 to 9 for now, which also tells us how to write the answer for this question. The question is understood and answered in a focused and effective manner with an accurate argument that addresses the requirements of the question. Response contains accurate references to approaches to research with regard to the question, describing their strengths and limitations, and it makes effective use of the stimulus material. Please give me a thumbs up if all of you have attempted at least this, like any question from question three. Like, have you attempted in practice, in writing? HL students here. All of you are HL, I think, except for one, if I'm not wrong. Ananya says yes, she has attempted. Okay. Adria also gave a thumbs up. All right. Ananya and Jordan, if you can please tell me, and Veer also, are you HL, SL, DP1, DP2, if you can specify? Shan is attempted. Okay. HL. All right. Veer is SL. Third is not attempted yet. Okay. All right, Shan. We'll get into the details of how to attempt. Now, this is the rubric. I'll take you through all three questions and show you how to attempt them. Just give me one moment. I don't think I can minimize. All right. Now, question 1A and B. Let's go through each question. Question number 1A is on research method. Question number 1B is on sampling method, right? So this is what I want you to follow and ensure this is there in your answer. 1, identify and state the research method or sampling technique. Straight up in the very first sentence. The research method used in the stimulus piece is dash. The sampling technique used in the stimulus piece is dash. Describe the research method and the sampling technique. When you now, let me take you through, then I'll tell you. Question part 3, which is outline one characteristic of the method or technique. Now you can use these topic sentences. One characteristic of the method or sampling technique is fillet. Now, why do I say use this topic sentence? You're going to write a paragraph. When the examiner is reading the paragraph, it's important that as per the rubric, you have ensured to give the examiner what the rubric was asking. It makes it very clear for the examiner to not get confused if the student has written this characteristic and the second one as an extension to the first one. It can be confusing and you can lose marks. I have also cut down marks many a times for students because it comes across as you've written this one characteristic. Now the second one you have connected with the previous one and it seems like this was one. And then you are substantiating something from the stimulus piece, which is why using these topic sentences makes it very clear that even you as a student know what the rubric is asking for and you have followed it to the T. So the research method used in the stimulus piece is field experiment. One characteristic of the method is fillet. The characteristic that you have written, it cannot be a random characteristic. It has to be a characteristic that you see in the stimulus piece. Of course, if it's a field experiment, it can't be that all the characteristics of the field experiment are described in that small stimulus piece that you get, right? So you have to find out a characteristic that is there in the stimulus piece and then write that characteristic. And then you have to substantiate it with evidence from the stimulus piece. Where do I see it? How do I see this characteristic is there? Then outline the second one. Another characteristic of the method is blank and then substantiate it from what you see in the stimulus piece. And that's the same method you use for the question 1 part B, which is on sampling method. Then we come to question 1C. Question 1C is to suggest an alternative research method. Now, the question says suggest an alternative or an additional research method. This is what the question will say. It will never say alternative and like either or. Both are going to be mentioned in the question. Explicitly, first you have to state what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting an alternative or are you suggesting an additional? All right. Explain the method you are suggesting. Give detailed explanation of how this method will be adopted without changing the aim of the study. You have to explain. If I'm suggesting an alternative, if field experiment was there and I'm suggesting, you should have gone with a case study. Why? How, without changing the aim, how can I achieve the same aim if I suggest another research method? So your solid reasoning has to be there for your choice, and you also have to explain it using research terminology, making it relevant to that particular stimulus space. All right. Just a tip. Maybe I think it'll come if I move forward. Yeah. Question 2, both types. Now moving to ethics. Okay. Is everything clear for question 1? Please give a thumbs up. If not, whatever question you may have, doubt you may have, please make a note of it or type it in the chat. Okay. Question 2. Now start by stating 3 ethical considerations that were applied and 3 ethical considerations that could have been applied. Now, visualize the answer with me when you're writing. I want your answer on ethics to have 7 paragraphs minimum. Okay. Now don't get scared with 7 paragraphs. What I mean by that is one paragraph, the first one, it needs to mention the 3 ethical considerations that were applied are. Name the 3. The 3 ethical considerations that could have been applied are, name the 3. Then each ethical consideration deserves its own paragraph. You have to define it. Like it says, organize the answer in 6 paragraphs, not 6, I would say 7, so that the first one where you're just mentioning becomes 1. With 1 paragraph dedicated to 1 ethical consideration, describe each ethic and then substantiate it from the stimulus piece. Why are you saying that this ethical consideration was applied? What is your logic? Where did you spot it in the stimulus piece? Sounds good? Are you all with me?
Hi students, can you please just respond to Ms. Bhavya? She is asking a question. Maybe like unmuting yourself for a minute or two.
Yes, I am with you.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you. Thank you, Shan. All right. Question. Thank you. It's okay. You guys can also give a thumbs up or something on the chat would do, because I'm not seeing faces, so it's difficult for me to just keep track. All right. Question number 3. Explain what is generalization, credibility, avoiding bias, whatever the question is asking. What do you understand of it? State how research studies are assessed on these factors, your arguments, and substantiating it from the stimulus space. A lot of times students ask, how many arguments should we write? How many arguments in this is acceptable? I would say 3 to 4 minimum should be there. Okay. And you can't just state an argument, you also have to explain it well. All right. Now, the best thing that I feel, based on that can be helpful, I'll show you an exemplar, which is a handwritten transcript of the student. Let me show that to you before I move on to the tips. Yeah. Now, this is by IB only. This is, again, a sample answer paper, which was scored very high. Has any of you seen this? Any exemplar till now? Or is this your first time?
First time.
Okay. So if you see this, I would really like, maybe Val, if we can make this happen, if we can share these resources with the students post the webinar, so that all the format that I've given in the presentation, you will be able to map it as well yourself, and you will see that only those things are here in the answer format and how this is very helpful. So for example, if you remember the question one, A part and B part, and if we map, the format that we just discussed to what is there in the student's answer as well, the research method used in this study was a laboratory experiment. So 1 mark I will give here straight up out of the 3. In lab experiments, a relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable can be established. So 1 characteristic is written. In this case, a cause and effect relationship can be established between the IV, which is whether the participants had to multitask or not, and the DV, which was the number of correct scores on the comprehension test. So this is substantiation from the stimulus space. Also, another characteristic of laboratory experiments is that standardized procedures are followed. In this experiment, each individual was given an instruction. Da, 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 da. Now, this is substantiation from the stimulus space. Make sense? Of course, I mean, I wouldn't mind. I'll share rest, Val, she can guide us better if the resources can be sent to the students.
Sure, Bhavya. We can send the resources. I think we have the contacts for all the students except for Jordan. I'm just dropping him a text. So yeah, we can arrange that.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course, Shan.
Ma'am, is this entire session about paper 3? Because I'm an SL student.
No, not at all. I am going to move to paper 1 and paper 2 in
Okay,
just a bit. I'm just
okay, sure.
wrapping paper 3 now. All right. So this is paper 3 sample. Please keep it, HL students. I think it's going to be very helpful and you can map what we just discussed with it. Okay. So moving on, I think these are tips for paper 3 students. The last bit of this, learn the rubric by heart, number 1. Number 2, format of answers is equally important as the content because the format helps you stick to the rubric. All right. 3, for any question, like for question number 1, B part, do not go for purposes sampling as the answer. Please keep that as your last choice unless the stimulus piece explicitly states it. Number 4, please start practicing writing for time management. Number 5, a tip, please make notes when you are in the exam room because it really is helpful. Of course, not during the reading time. There are rules we need to follow. And question number 2, which is on ethics, stick to 3+3 criteria. Remember that for the ethics one. All right, now we're moving to paper 1 and 2. All right, HL and SL students, paper 1, the structure is the same. It's a 49 marks paper. Section A is on SAQs, section B is on ERQs. We all know you will get 3 questions in the first section of SAQs. One will be from bio, one will be from cognitive approach, one will be from sociocultural approach. No options, whatever you get, you have to attempt. When it comes to section B, you will have 3 options. One definitely will be from bio, one from cognitive, one from sociocultural. You have to choose one on the spot. Okay, now these are the command terms. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail for the command terms for SAQs in particular because even to me they are confusing. If you understand them better, great. I always say consider describe and explain to be one and outline is the second one. So in case there is describe, in case there is explain, consider them either or. Please go explain, give a detailed account. Okay. And for outline, if it's there, then you have to, you can cut short on certain things and you can make it like an outline. Outline is easier to understand. The difference between describe and explain on paper becomes a little difficult. Like what does the difference look like? I can read it out here and you can see the difference, but when you're actually sitting down to write, it is confusing. I agree. So describe, explain, consider that to be the same. SAQ rubric. For now, I think I'm not going to open the rubric. I'm just going to take you to the short answer question do's and don'ts for a little bit, and then we can go through the rubric together. The do's. First sentence should directly answer the question. Directly. If the question asks you to describe one study of how one hormone affects behavior. An appropriate first sentence is, newcomer carried out a study of how cortisol may affect the consolidation of verbal declarative memory. This is an example. If the question is just as simple as explain one model of memory, all right, or the SEQ can also specify which model. So the question says describe multi-store memory model. Multi-store memory model is the first line. If the question says explain one study of multi-store memory model or of one model of memory, whatever model you've chosen to explain in that question, you have to clearly state the first sentence should directly answer the question. And in this case, the question is focused more on the study to explain one model of memory. So you have to name both in the very first line of the first paragraph itself. Please do not engage or spend any time in any flowery language, any background information that you want to develop the answer and reach the introduction. Please cut to the chase. SEQs are not for that. All right. Number two, define terms. Very important. If you're using certain terms, let's say, for example, the working memory model has so many parts to it. Don't just state them. You have to define them at least in one sentence. Yes, if the question is outline, I would still recommend if, very briefly in one sentence only, if you can, explain what the parts of that model are. What do you understand by it? Why are you naming it? Okay, so any terms used in the question should be defined. If the question asks about the role of one antagonist, you should define the term antagonist. If the question asks about a theory, you should outline the theory to demonstrate understanding, because it can't be assumed your class teacher or your subject teacher who teaches you in school is not checking your paper. They're not going to assume, okay, the student knows. So defining terms is very important. You should make sure to choose one good example to answer the question. The research should be clearly outlined in terms of aim, procedure, and findings. I usually say, the format can be, you can also make a note of it. Cell. First paragraph, concept. Second paragraph, evidence. Third paragraph, link. It's as simple as that. Okay. And aage, like anything in no flowery here and there, nothing is needed. Number 4, make note of the command term. But like I said, describe, explain can be considered one, outline one. Remember to explicitly link your study to the question, which is the last paragraph that you do, and you make the link. If it is a study of how a hormone affects behavior, you should clearly explain what the study tells us about the role of the hormone. It is your job to explain to the reader why you are using this particular study for this particular question. I can't know that you are using glanzolin cunits for a particular model. I need to know why. Why have you chosen that to explain one particular model of memory? Okay, and this question, I don't know if you have ever thought of it, any of you from here. Students usually ask how long the SEQ should be and this and that. Average response here, I've written 350 to 500 words, but let me tell you something. For socio-cultural approach, the answers are going to be relatively lengthier, because it's very conceptually heavy unit. So you can't escape that. So if you feel that your answer is longer, it seems lengthier, it is going to be relatively lengthier. If you want to make a choice and be very wise, I think that takes a lot of practice also of writing, that you get to a stage where okay, this content I don't want to write, and this is not necessary. You have to write a lot of answers, take a lot of feedback from your teachers for it. If you've consistently maintained that practice throughout 2 years, you will be able to achieve answers in 350 to 500 words. But if you've not done that, that's all right. Writing extra is not going to gain, you're not going to gain extra marks. Writing extra, you're not going to lose marks. But yes, you lose out on time for sure. So I've given you all 3 scenarios. Be wise. Don'ts. Do not write an introduction, simply focus on the question. When I say don't write an introduction, I don't mean that paragraph you don't have to write. Of course, you have to write that paragraph, but like I said, CEL, concept. The first paragraph, which we call the introduction for an SAQ, needs to be focused on the question, on the concept. When this word introduction is used here in this, first point of the don't, it's usually considered like you write an essay, let's say an extended essay you're writing, and you write this, flowery, not flowery, but like you have to give a, like a preview of what the answer is about and all of that. No, no, none of that needs to be done. Stick to the concept. Um, SEQs will ask for one example of a theory, study, or concept. Never write more than one. Even as part of a short introduction, you're always marked on your first example. So, for example, if the SEQ is on ethical considerations, a lot of students waste time in the first paragraph of the concept in defining all ethics. No, you don't have to do that. You have to stick to only one ethical consideration, and the choice of which ethic depends on which study you are writing and which ethical consideration through that study you want to highlight. So please do not even name, that, just to think that, okay, by naming all the ethics I can gain extra marks. No, that's not going to happen. 3, do not include anecdotal data. So no personal stories or references to films, or that this was my experience in etc etc. Please don't write I, me, all of that. Do not memorize all the details of the study. When I say this, you don't need to know the sample sizes, exact, certain statements, the percentages in the results. Not necessary. You don't have to memorize all of that. That's unnecessary data. Of course, you need to know that to be able to make sense of certain evaluation points, but you can make those evaluation points later in an ERQ, I'm saying. Here, of course, you don't have to evaluate, but when you use the same study in an ERQ and you want to evaluate them, of course, talking about a sample size can be helpful even if you're writing something on generalization. But you don't have to know that this percentage was the finding or these many participants were there. Fifth, of course, do not evaluate research. SEQs don't want that. And sixth, time management. Please give yourselves 20 minutes to write a response. That's how your entire paper is divided, 20, 20, 20, and 1 hour for the ERQ. I would recommend don't, run by the clock so much. 20 minutes are there. Please try to finish your answer in 18 minutes. Practice, time yourselves. Okay, now comes paper 1 and 2 ERQ command terms. Now this is for the extended response questions, section B for paper 1 and paper 2. Command terms for ERQs, I think, are relatively easier. They're not that challenging, though I always also give this recommendation as a tip. First of all, I mean, I don't know how many of you have the habit of preparing answers throughout the year. My tip would be, if anyone is in DP1 over here, please start preparing answers, so that by the end of it, when you're preparing for your board exams, you're not studying from booklets or books or multiple resources. You are studying from your answers. I know students come up also, they say that, I don't have the habit of studying from answers, I have the habit of studying from books and all of that. Trust me, marks, like scoring on this paper, is not so much about the content only. It's a lot about sticking to the command term requirements and on the spot following the format. Okay, so studying from your own answers that you can make from 10 resources as much as you like is always better to contain the overload of content which is already there in this subject. You all need to contain yourselves, and having one set length of answer right in front of you psychologically also is very helpful when you're preparing for exams. And 5 days before the exams, when you're revising and doing all of that, referring to 5 sources can be very anxiety provoking. So please stick to answers that you have created throughout the 2 years. If DP2 students in this webinar don't have answers, that's all right. Whatever time you have, please stick to finding certain things that help you contain yourself, because I agree the content is a lot. Okay. So is it better to memorize answers of all possible ERQs? Of course it is. I mean, I would recommend that way. Have answers in front of you. memorize from answers, don't memorize from books, multiple sources. I would not recommend that. Because, see, for example, the question is on ethics, in ERQ. Um, and it's asking you to contrast two ethical considerations. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Maybe let's, if not contrast, to what extent, or maybe evaluate ethical considerations. If you are evaluating an ethical consideration, of course you're writing two studies, because that's what the format requires and asks you to do. Two studies, and you've picked up two different ethical considerations. Now, when the studies are being written, you're not going to write the evaluation of those two studies like you would in any other question. The evaluation needs to focus on anything that connects with ethical considerations only, because other than that, whatever you evaluate would not make sense. Automatically, your evaluation reduces. You're only writing one or two arguments, and you have to engage in explanation and discussion of that argument. If you sit down on the spot and learn from 10 other sources, different sources, and you're sitting in the paper and that question comes and you want to prepare the answer on the spot, it's a lot of mental work. So your mental energies are getting divided. It's getting divided into thinking what to write. It's also getting divided into how much should I write, what should I write, thinking a lot, spending a lot of time in that, and you don't have that kind of time. It does take 1 hour to write that long answer. So it's better to contain yourselves and stick to answers that you can prepare throughout the 2 years, and it's doable. It's very much doable to prepare answers. Okay, so back to command terms. Contrast. This is explanation in the guide, which says give an account of the differences between two or more items or situations, referring to both, all, or all of them. Throughout, I'll come to contrast in particular. There are 2-3 separate slides I have prepared for contrast. So we'll focus on it. What it means, it means to focus only on differences and refer to these throughout the response. For example, contrast two explanations of one disorder. So for example, if you're doing abnormal and you have to contrast between two approaches, for example, biological explanation of depression and sociocultural explanation of depression, please stick to differences in one paragraph that will be dedicated to catering to contrast as the command term. The rest of the format of the answer remains the same. I'll come to it again and we'll circle back on it so you get more clarity. Discuss, offer a considered and balanced review that includes a range of arguments, factors, or hypotheses. Conclusions should be presented clearly and supported by appropriate evidence. Evaluate, make an appraisal by weighing up the strengths and limitations of something. I find discuss and evaluate, of course, by the terms, it sounds very different. Explanations also sound different. Both are essentially asking you in this way or that way to focus on perspectives. When it comes to evaluate, those perspectives are called strengths and limitations. In discussions, it's known as perspectives. Okay, so like you have to discuss, you can't just give one, you have to think of the other side also. For example, if deception is used, it's bad to deceive the participants, but in this case it was necessary to deceive, otherwise they would have guessed the aim of the study and that would become a bias. So it's important in this situation to deceive the participants. So that is a discussion, right? You're giving perspectives here and there. In evaluate, that becomes the strength and one of the limitations also. So it's almost, similar things. That is why I say when you are preparing answers over the 2 years, prepare all answers keeping in mind the compound term evaluate. They will apply automatically to discussion also very well. Okay, so that's another tip. To what extent, again, to what extent is consider the merits or otherwise of an argument or concept, right? So merits or otherwise, again, same language, strengths, limitations, what are the benefits of it, what are the limitations of it. Conclusions should be presented clearly and supported by appropriate evidence and sound arguments. So there are a lot of overlapping understanding, but to what extent is very simple in your mind. If you think about what should I write, how do I interpret, to what extent is basically asking me to what extent does this make sense, or does this apply, or this concept is explained by this study. So it's to be able to come to a conclusion or an answer that to what extent this makes sense or this applies to something, you have to give an analysis of strengths and limitations, and that will help you come to a conclusion, right? So it's almost the same thing, which is why I say when you're preparing answers throughout the year, focus on evaluate as a command term, and then you can very easily write the answer. That can apply to all three. Contrast, I'm going to come specifically to. Rubric, I'll take you through in a while. Now, this is an organization of an ERQ. I'll also take you to a typical format. I think first I can take you through this. First paragraph, introduction. Second paragraph, knowledge and understanding. Paragraph 3, study 1. Next paragraph, evaluation of that study, then knowledge and understanding, then study, evaluation of study, and conclusion. Now, this is a typical format of an ERQ. Many a times now, what can be different scenarios where you may not be able to stick to this format typically, like to the T. Those circumstances can be, let's say, for example, you might not have a lot to differentiate between an introduction and the first knowledge and understanding paragraph. That's all right. Like in the first paragraph only, you can, choose to give an introduction and also give embed all your knowledge and understanding there, and then move on to the second paragraph, which is straight away going to be the study. So that flexibility you have. Contrast, let's say if there's a command term, or evaluate is the command term. If, for example, the question says evaluate one argument or one explanation of one disorder, which is paper 2, let's say. So you are taking up, let's say, bio as an explanation, and you have to evaluate. Now, in bio, you have chosen like whatever you were taught. Maybe you were taught genetics, right? And you're answering your question on the genetic argument. You have to dedicate one paragraph after this evaluation of study 2, one paragraph that only evaluates the genetic argument or genetic explanation to depression. How valid is that? Okay, so strengths and limitations of that particular explanation. Now, because that was the main thing that the question was also asking you to do. Now, you may think that certain evaluation points may get repeated in the answer because I've evaluated the studies, and through the studies I may have evaluated those arguments as well. That's all right, but mostly those studies are being evaluated from a research perspective, correct? So if there's a repetition, be wise enough to write it in a different way, write it in a more concluding way instead of like explaining them here also. Choose where you would like to explain those arguments if you think it's being repetitive. If not, if you have more, why not? But a separate paragraph needs to be there to cater to the command term of the question. And the same similar like flexibility you need to show with contrast also, which I'll come to. So I'll move back, and this is your organization of an ERQ. Introduction should accomplish 3 things. State the position with regard to the question. Now, this is necessary if you are somebody who writes an argumentative approach, like who takes an argumentative approach in writing the answer. Argumentative, right? It depends on you, like based on the choices of the studies that were done in school. A lot of students sometimes take just the discussion approach. A lot of students like to write answers which, deliberately they have chosen 2 studies which are saying the opposite things because they want to take perspectives like that and then draw a conclusion. Now that takes time. I think that also depends a lot on the way your teachers are also teaching based on what studies they have chosen to particularly take up in the classroom. So, however, still, your position with regard to the question, outline how the question will be answered, define any important terms. For me, in the intro, I need to have a preview of what am I going to find in the answer. If the question is on evaluate biological explanation to depression, I need to know in the introduction which biological explanation are you going for. Certain schools can take up neurotransmission. Somebody can take about, the brain parts, the injury localization. Some can take up genetics for depression. What have you chosen? What are you going to talk about in the answer? So like I teach genetics argument for as an explanation, biological explanation to depression. So in the first paragraph, I need to know what is a genetic argument that you're talking about? First, stating it. Now, second, what is it? Why genetic argument? Give me some significance of why. Like maybe the Human Genome Project has identified so many genes for this particular, disorder, or so much resources are being, spent on that Human Genome Project to be able to give us that significant information. So I need some relevance or significance of why that um, argument, and also something that tells me on that genetic argument what am I going to talk like here in like read in the answer. The question was evaluate, right? um, you have to mention in the introduction that the answer, like it's somewhere it needs to come through that the answer will focus on strengths and limitations of the genetic argument, so that you've taken care of the command term. You've ensured that the answer is focused right from the start. All right. Then comes supporting paragraphs, which is the rest, knowledge and understanding and all of that. Good writers have focused paragraphs. This means that each paragraph should have only one argument or idea. The examiner should be able to read only the first sentence of each of your paragraphs called topic sentences and clearly understand the argument of your essay. For example, the remainder of each paragraph unpacks that topic sentence and provides evidence to support it. For example, although twin studies are often seen as highly reliable, they have some serious limitations. That paragraph will focus only on limitations. So I know what's coming. Okay, there's no hard and fast rule that you can't have so many paragraphs or you need to have these many paragraphs only. Please be wise in how you want to club your paragraphs. Okay, so like I said, in the typical format here, one can be evaluation of studies. Now, evaluation does not only mean limitations or strengths, it means both, right? When you are writing it, please just, to make it more clear and simple to understand, choose what you want to write first. You want to talk about strengths, you want to start with that. Initial part of the paragraph is on strengths, then you move on to limitations. Don't be like one strength, one limitation, one limitation, one strength. It gets confusing. It'll be confusing for the reader also. What is your perspective? You will not be able to give an argument. You're just writing and vomiting on the paper whatever's there on your mind, and that's not how it's supposed to be. Conclusion should simply be a restatement of the argument, and the whole paragraph can be just 2-3 sentences also. A lot of times students get very confused in what do I write in the conclusion. It has to be focused. Conclusion is an inference being drawn from your answer. So everything that you have written, if it makes sense to you, if you've understood it conceptually, what am I trying to say, you will be able to draw something from it and you will be able to write the conclusion. So conclusions are very personal. Okay. Conclusions depend on a good introduction. Conclusions depend on good knowledge and understanding, on good understanding of your own argument. So if you know that, you will be able to write the like the conclusion on this spot. No new research or theories should be included in this part of the response. When new ideas are introduced and not linked to the question, this once again demonstrates a lack of focus. All right. We move into the do's of ERQs. Number one, any theory that will be used, it has to be explained in order to demonstrate clear knowledge and understanding. Please don't state that, you're talking about schema theory and this is what schemas mean. That's it. No. Schema theory tells us how were they developed, what do they do, how do we use them today, all of that. So it can't just be a simple definition of what are schemas. Sure. I mean, and yes, so we can share the resources. All right. All essays should have 2 or more pieces of research unless the question says otherwise. Question will not say otherwise. 2 pieces of research are more than enough. Please stick to that because you don't have a lot of time also. All research, a lot of students say AMRC, aim, method, results, conclusion. I say APR, which is aim, procedure, results. However, you don't need to include every detail. Like I said, don't waste your brain cells memorizing sample sizes. Critical thinking must be explained. Please don't just write that the study lacks ecological validity, full stop. You need to explain why are you saying the study lacks ecological validity. Just listing it will not give you marks. I have never given marks to my students when they have just listed the evaluation points. I need you to explain them. So if it cuts your time from writing 6 to 3, that's all right. Please explain the 3, prioritize which one to write. Sampling, sample size, um, and because of that generalizability can be increased, is not an evaluation point or a critical thinking point. That suggests advanced critical thinking. So please don't choose to write that. If you are opting, you have less time and you want to prioritize which one to write, sample size is not the one. Okay, it can be the 4th or the 5th evaluation point to write. Be wise, very stick to the answer, the requirements of the answer. For example, I don't know if any of you writes Kendler. Kendler is a study, it's a twin study in genetics, right? Usually it's paired with another study called Caspi. If you are writing Kendler and you are not writing that, one of the limitations of Kendler is that it did not identify another gene. It did not identify any gene. It didn't study gene in isolation. And you're writing about every other research oriented critical thinking. It's a very, very significant critical thinking point here and a limitation of Kenlo that you're not writing. So please don't think that the evaluations are only research oriented. They're also content oriented, concept oriented. So in the study, what is the main focus? What is the concept oriented critical evaluation that I can do? Don't just stick to research oriented critical thinking, and always explain why. Critical thinking should demonstrate a breadth of understanding. If all you do is comment on the sample size for all research, this does not demonstrate a high or advanced level of critical thinking. The don'ts. Don't include anecdotal data, same. Don't memorize all the details like sample size and all of that, not necessary. Don't use 2 examples of the same thing. For example, using both HM and Clive Uring. Now, the confusing thing could be, it can be that, for example, genetics, like I'm saying, for bio explanation, or for paper 1 also genetics, and you're using Kendler and Caspi. Of course, the question is on genetics, so you are using 2 studies that are on genes, right? That's not what I mean over here. HM and Clive Uring are saying the same thing. They're both case studies. So there's a lot of similarity in both. And if you are talking about ethics and these are the 2 studies you've chosen and you're talking about the same ethic from both, I would not recommend that in an extended response question. Even if the question is on research methods, in an ERQ, try to pick 2 different research methods in the answer. So knowledge and understanding paragraph 1 will focus on one research method, study, its evaluation. Then knowledge and understanding paragraph 2 will be focused on another research method. And, again, study and evaluation. Lastly, don't automatically evaluate ethics, gender, or cultural validity of the study. Critical thinking must be directly linked to the demands of the question. Please don't, of course, there are, these, what do you call them? Acronyms that I'm sure your teachers must be teaching you or talking about. And, I also keep repeating them here and there, but that is for your understanding that in case, you're not able to think of anything, you can use those acronyms and jog your memory for it. But does not mean that if you've learned magic, for example, or Viper, or teacup, you have to use the entire thing. No, please stick to what you think is relevant for that particular question. In a question on ethics, please don't talk about evaluation that talks about whether the findings are credible or not. Nobody's asking you if it's valid or not. We are asking about ethical consideration, and of course that automatically reduces your arguments to maybe 1 or 2 points, but they need explanation. So spend time in explanation. Now, command term contrast. Certain tips over here. The key to this essay is that critical thinking is focused on showing differences between 2 approaches or explanations, of course, right? Because it's asking you to contrast. So it's asking you to tell us Contrast means differentiate between these two approaches or explanations, whatever the question is asking for, or the two models, for example. The essay should start off with a simple introduction. Now, the format is the same simple introduction that clearly identifies the two approaches or models or explanations, whatever the question is asking. It is important that the two that you choose have enough of a difference. So if they're saying models and you're going with multi-store memory model and working memory model, they have enough of a difference for you to contrast and differentiate between them. So it'll help you write a strong essay and cater to the commands of the demands of the command term contrast, which you then follow by a brief description of the first approach, same format, knowledge and understanding, study, evaluation. And then before you write the conclusion, like I said, there's going to be a paragraph, which is the most important in this essay because it is catering to specifically the demands of contrast, which is showing an understanding of the difference in the approaches. So you write one paragraph that helps you highlight what all differences were there in one paragraph together. When contrasting two approaches, focus on the assumptions that are made and how they carry out their research. An example is below. I can give you this example. For you can see contrasting biological and sociocultural approaches. Now, of course, this is the approach in general. The question will be focused on something, right? In disorders or human relationships or something like that, attraction and all of that. So there you can stick to the contrasting. This is how you need to do it. So this is another sample which you can go through and understand the content. All right. Now comes an ERQ on ethics. What is the question asking? The question is typically asking you to look at ethics, of course, two or more ethical considerations in research on the reliability of cognitive processes. For example, this is the question. You are assessed on the following aspects. Have you identified and discussed two or more ethical considerations? Is the research used relevant to the reliability of cognitive processes? And number three, is there an actual discussion in the essay, that is, the command term requirements are met or not? If the question is specifically saying ethical considerations in research on reliability of cognitive process, reliability of cognitive process is a subtopic in cognitive unit. All of you need to have access to the guide for this. Do you all know the names of the subtopics in your syllabus? Like, do you know what flashbulb memory comes under in cognitive?
Memory, constructive memory, and all of that.
Yes, but what is the topic that it comes under? Like reconstructive memory and all of that. Flashbulb memory, reconstructive flashbulb do not come under the same thing. It comes under cognitive approach, but what is the subtopic under cognitive approach? Otherwise, you will not be able to select the study. Your answer can go very wrong even if you know everything. Under cognitive processes, just cognitive processes, I think somewhere the title has emotions in it. Do you have access to this? I don't know if I do from here, I need to quickly take a stop and show you the guide maybe. Do you guys have the guide? If you can just tell me, have access to the guide, psychology guide. I do. Okay, where you do?
Hi, Bhavya. I think we can link to resources if need
I'll
be.
do that.
Yeah. I think Ananya said that she doesn't have access. So we
Okay.
can maybe share links to all the students.
Absolutely.
Shan is asking how long the meeting would be. I think we've run 10 minutes over, but still.
Another 10 minutes, I think I would take, if that's okay. And I'll quickly wrap up after that, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay, sure. I think that should be okay. Shan, I hope that answers your question too.
Yep, thank you, thank you.
Sure. Now, if I take you to this, can you see my screen, all of you? I think, I hope
Yeah,
you.
yeah, we
Okay.
can.
So, models of memory comes under cognitive processing. This is the topic. Okay. Now, the question that I was saying, maybe let's say reliability of cognitive processes. Now, you need to be very sure if the question is saying um, ethics in from reliability of cognitive processes, you can only select research studies that you may have done for reconstructive memory and biases in thinking and decision making only. You can't take a research study that you must have done for um, models of memory over here. Just because you read cognitive does not mean that any study from cognitive process, unit can be taken. You have to know the subtopic, like which is this, and under that, what all content have you done and the studies specific to that. Does that make sense? Which is where this becomes tricky. All right, so this question was on the research methods, ethical considerations, sorry, and reliability of cognitive process. So this is again the structure. Like I said, I've already talked about it. Select two ethical considerations and two different studies for it. Similar, it goes for research methods as well. For the tips, although the question says two or more, two is really enough. In your introduction, only identify the two ethical considerations you're going to discuss, not all of them. Some of the ethical considerations have more to write about than others, and that's okay. And you should not evaluate the studies other than linking them to ethical consideration because the question is on ethics. Same thing is for research methods as well, same kind of structure as well, and similar tips as well. I think you can go through these tips because they're exactly the same as for the research. Sorry, for the ethics. Now, these are certain tips that I have. Critical thinking, like I said, content oriented, research oriented, concept oriented. Peel, point, evidence, explanation, link. This is all that you're trying to do in an ERQ. You're stating a point, you're trying to put evidence for it. That evidence helps you then explain it and link back to it. Explain evaluation points, do not just state them. Avoid absolutes, all these that it never happens always everywhere, avoid that. Introduction must give a preview of how you're going to write the answer, and conclude your essay with a direct response to the question. So this is it from my side. Any questions that you may have, you can put them here and I can take them.
Oh, ma'am, I have a question.
Yes, please, wait, tell me.
Ma'am, so you just mentioned that if the question is on ethics, then we don't. Are you suggesting that we don't evaluate the study? We only evaluate the ethical consideration of the study?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And ma'am, what if the question is on research methodology, like evaluate the research methodology of the study? Then what are we supposed to do?
Then, of course, I think it's easy. I think I find that question very easy for the students to attempt because you can evaluate, as per the research method. If it was, let's say, a field experiment, talk about, ecological validity of it, internal validity in a field experiment. Is causation, established? If not established, of course, it automatically means somewhere the findings can be correlational in nature. What does that mean? Can any other alternative research method can be used? Anything. You have the field open over there and you have so many things to evaluate on, because that's what, I don't know, Veer, if I don't remember exactly if you're an HL or an SL student. If you're from HL, so many other things, from it.
No,
So
myself, but thank you.
yeah, sure.
Any other questions from any of the students? Bhavya, I've shared some questions on chat. If you can just go through them if you would like to respond to those.
Yeah. What are some common pitfalls that students make when answering ERQs and how can they avoid them? I think common errors that students can make, again, like I said, with evaluation points, only stating them is one very big error that I've noticed, and not explaining them. Number two, studies. Sometimes students write the AMRC or APR, which is aim procedure results, very, very detailed. Like you write extra. Please be assured, think about what the question is asking, what all details from the procedure I can afford to, you know, skip out are not necessary to write. But in case you feel that that judgment, you don't have that developed yet, then work on your time management. Okay, so that you don't make an error in terms of leaving out answers at the end. Another error that students can make is not focusing on, like, missing out by just sticking to the exact format of an ERQ. You might miss out on the focus of the question, which may ask you to evaluate a theory, which may ask you to evaluate an explanation. You may think that you're already evaluating the research studies, so there's no another paragraph needed, but there is another paragraph needed, which evaluates the theory only without any research substantiated, and in addition to whatever already that is the requirement of an ERQ. How should students approach integrating different levels of analysis in their ERQ? Like I said, content oriented evaluations are also important. Now what that means is that there could be, when you're writing flashbulb memory, there can be certain evaluation or in that, theory that you can link with some other unit that you have already studied from bio or from sociocultural. Please make those connections as well. That also gives a content oriented critical evaluation. So that's how you can integrate different levels of analysis. Another is, of course, thinking about the basic concepts of determinism. You can think of basic concepts like bidirectional ambiguity, like ethic approach, emic approach. These are also things that you can integrate in your understanding of the three subunits. What are the most challenging topics in grade 12th IB psychology, and how can students effectively prepare for them? Again, I find this particular question, and I think the students who understand the syllabus well, very tricky in psychology. You have other subjects, and you know that in psychology, there is no way you can identify which topic is more important or challenging or this, that. There's no way. Everything is important. Um, the good part is you can frame paper one and paper two questions well in advance. There's nothing in the paper that can come and you can, go by, oh my God, what is this? I didn't expect this question. That can't be. You can predict questions, create them, form them, create your own question bank well in advance. You know all the command terms, you know what cannot be written in the question, how it cannot be framed, and how it can be framed. All that clarity is there in the guide. So you can never be taken by surprise. You can only be taken by surprise if you've chosen to skip a topic. That, oh my God, I didn't prepare this and this came in the paper. That's just bad luck. Okay, what do examiners typically look for in high scoring responses, especially in terms of critical thinking and analysis? I think the simple answer to that is explaining critical thinking. And number two, critical thinking relevant to the question. Okay, that is very these two. How should students balance explanation, evaluation, and SAQ given the word limit? No evaluation in SAQ. You don't have to write an evaluation in SAQ at all. So there's no discussion on balancing. If there's nothing to balance, you don't have to write evaluation in an SAQ. That's not needed. Please do not waste time. Be very, very careful. What are some common mistakes students make in SAQs? One very big mistake, writing evaluation, thinking that you may impress the examiner by giving some knowledge. You're making a big error. It's not needed. You're not impressing anybody. You are just wasting time. You're cutting down on time from ERQs. Do not write it. Other common mistakes, not writing the like directly answering the question in the first sentence itself, giving background information, not necessary. Only no SAQs is I don't know, in your language, Gen Z language, how you can like stick to no nonsense is SAQs. No here and there. Just stick to the question and write it. Any other mistake? Explicit links have to be made. That's what the last paragraph is about. So, like the conclusion is about. Depends on your intro. How well you explain the concept is how well you can make links in your last concluding paragraph. What are some of the best resources we can use to create our responses. Um, I'm not sure what this question exactly means. I mean, your school may have provided certain booklets to you. There are certain resources online. I don't remember what's that called. One second, I'll have to quickly pull that down. Um, I think this Save My Exams is also a good one where you find good notes. I don't know if you've ever referred to it. I've referred to it once. One of my students sent it to me. I don't know if you have ever seen any of you, but Save My Exams is a good, seemed like a good resource. Please do your thorough check. And yeah, I think your teachers have good access to a lot of resources. And if you want more, ask them. They will send it to you. They'll be more help. I think everyone will be helpful. Yeah, that's it. Anything else? Any other question?
Yeah, any students, if you have any other questions, please, this now is the time to ask them to Ms. Bhavya, because we will soon be closing this session. So, okay, I think it looks like the students have all their questions answered, and it was really amazing to have such an informative session, Ms. Bhavya. I'm pretty sure that the students would have found it productive. And to all the students, to all the attendees, please drop a hi on the number that we sent you the link through. So if you are an existing student, you already have a student group with us where you can drop a hi, so we can just compile all the resources that Ms. Bhavya would like to share with you, and we would share them with you. But for the people who do not, for the students who do not have continuous classes with us, you all can just drop a hi on the number, and we will share the resources with you from there. We also have one-on-one sessions with Ms. Bhavya and with our other teachers if you would like help in other subjects. But especially for psychology, please let us know if you would like to book classes with Ms. Bhavya, and we will share her availability with you. And that should probably help you more, I think, with the exams coming up. So yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Bhavya. This was really great. And we hope to seeing more webinars or more sessions with you in the future. We can close this meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. All the best for anyone who's appearing for your board exams soon. And I wish you the best. Please don't worry. Content heavy subject, strategize well, and you all will do wonderfully well. All the best. Thank you.